When it comes to villains, there is usually only one antagonist that opposes the main goal of the hero. They challenge everything about them and they serve to influence their very story from beginning to very end. But of course, in the case with Puss in Boots, it's actually just not one villain, but three of them. The ultimate overcrowding in a movie you could ever see. A concept that should not work at first, that could actually overwhelm its viewer, but it actually works. And it's something I really appreciated to give us something new and something more refreshing than of course what Disney has done in the past, differentiating itself from the trend of either no villains or horrible twist villains. And this is all done to straighten the core concepts and themes of the movie and the adventure of Puss, where all except for one seek the same wish. As we all know, the point of the movie is to show how Puss is down to his last of his 9 lives, where for the most part up to this point he has been wasteful, dying again and living again to gallop on his adventures of being a fearless hero for the public, until the doctor really points that fact out, where now he must find a way to restore that. And it puts him face to face with things like the mysterious wolf who is actually death incarnate, angered at his own wastefulness to play with him so he could die, where he gets caught with Goldilocks and Jack Horner, who seek the same wishing star to fulfill their own lifelong goals. And as time moves on in the film, we get more and more about their background and what they are really like and what actually motivates them and how it ties directly within the main themes of the movie. In a way, it puts all of the typical villain tropes into one movie by having each play one distinct part that we already know of. In the case of what we learned with Goldilocks, she is the one who puts the idea for Puss's search for the wishing star when they tried to hire him at first so that he could continue on his very journey. They portray her very story with the 3 bears of that of a crime family, or just her adopted family trying to get what she exactly wants. All of them are not inherently evil in this film, being only introduced to drum up the action, where their real intentions are actually more pure, hinting towards Goldie's own secret goal of finding her own real family or actually wishing for one. In the background of the film, we aren't given too much about her own story or the others because we don't really need to know about that, where we form this idea of what she's already trying to claim, something that she felt missing from her very youth, which of course is something we would have thought as well. The story of Goldilocks never teaches us about her parents or her real family, but more one that was geared towards she found something that was not too hot or too cold, but just right. And this is where we also learn in the story, instead of being angered by the presence of a girl who slept and ate their food, they're actually welcoming her with open arms. A lost child actually trying to just look for a family, where in this case she actually did. So even if the case presents them as villains opposing Puss's search for the wish, they are actually more geared to being the sympathetic ones, having a goal that anyone else would really want, to actually understand them a bit more. In her case, it's about found family and why that is important to many people's lives, wishing for care and affection, discovering how that really matters in the end. Like I said many times previously about this movie, this is mainly about life and the many aspects that results from it, allowing Puss to learn and grow from his own arrogant ways in the beginning. Where of course, we then move on to the bigger villain in Big Jack Horner, a villain who is just being made to be a villain and nothing more. He shares all the traits that we would expect these foes would when we were young, just being a big baddie only in it for himself, being the people we hate out of life. And by far, he has also become one of the most popular characters out of this entire film, as the internet would have seen previously, which is all because of that carefree attitude of not taking anyone seriously in life and trying to do the most abhorrent things possible on purpose, whether it be towards the main heroes or even his own lackeys himself. This is a character that was definitely needed in the public after so many animated films just tried to make their villains more out of sympathy or just removing them for the sake of these new stories, which have not worked, where now you have something that just reintroduces the good old-fashioned concept and it actually works really well. And it's actually perfect to fit his themes in the movie that mainly showcase how people want more out of their lives regarding the insignificant nursery rhyme that he was based off of, that no one really cared for that, putting his story being overshadowed by magical creatures, where he just wants to be more important out of all of them. His tragedy comes from no one actually loving him and actually finding that within magic to make him more important than anyone else because no one actually gave that love to begin with, despite him coming from a well-established successful background that anyone would have wanted. And no matter how much others tried in this film to make him look good, to take a look at his actions that he's doing, he just really doesn't care, being so fully aware. Because if it doesn't help him, it won't help anything at all for his life. And this is what actually happened in the allegory of the nursery rhyme and how it actually tied into this real person who became an opportunist, seeking more out of his own life, betraying his own boss to get what he wants, which is the same case of what he does here. And the best thing about his case is how he actually finally gets his final reward, where he wanted to be big and all powerful with all the magic in the world, where he actually did get that by being consumed by that very power, exploding across the land in the most powerful way that reflected upon the dangers of overconsumption and realizing what is more important in your heart rather than your mind, as was what happened with the case of Goldie and Puss resolving in the very end, realizing that they already had what they really wanted, bringing us to the main point of the entire film being the concept of death itself. Because this entire journey would have not happened if it weren't for the physical representation of death itself that sent Puss on his journey across the lands for the wishing star. To portray death in this form really works and really represents that dark and ominous force that some antagonists have over the main characters, over their own fears and ambitions. To really have the literal concept of the cessation of life itself chasing after Puss really works well for a cat that has supposedly 9 chances to live in the face of death, to laugh at that and scoff at any opportunity it tries to get to kill him like a Final Destination movie. And of course, in his case, he is just doing his job and is not inherently evil, although he chases his prey around like an evil villain would. He simply works to commit to the natural order of the world, where Puss actually does everything to go against that all. They make it really clear that no one would be able to defeat him as what would happen with typical villains, and to do so in this film is only meant to delay an inevitable fate, trying to make him play with Puss like a predator with his prey to represent that very dynamic. His voice is low and soft like the final words you hear before you pass away to the next world, where you see everything flash before your eyes, being distinctively compared to a cat and mouse relationship, or more like a dog and cat relationship, where a wolf of course is being twice the size of a normal domesticated cat who always gets the upper hand no matter what they do. He is simply there so that Puss can realize what the meaning of life really is. He's not after anyone else in this entire film, but only him, where most cases where we see both characters, he ends up by himself to represent his true thoughts and feelings about the impending doom that's trying to chase after him, that nobody would actually be around to help him no matter what they do, and how most people actually feel when faced down with the fact that you wasted that opportunity to live to begin with, to be so close to the hour of your death. Like if it weren't for him coming out of the shadows to do so, he would have never cared about this, and probably would have died normally, which is actually kind of sad to think about if death actually let him be, where he would have died and succeeded in that plan, but that actually isn't the main point of what this film tried to represent and why it actually works so well to begin with. Each of them actually add to his own adventure and his own character from where we first saw him in the first film that really enhances his story to a different level than what films like Frozen 2 or Ralph Breaks the Internet did, doing absolutely nothing with no villain in those cases. Some cases that actually ruin the story completely that don't really add something meaningful to that conversation because there is nothing to gain when they already had a great opposing idea presented in the first film. This event is what also made the Spider-Verse work, which inspired these DreamWorks movies to begin with, by having these multiple characters from the wacky to the normal ones on both sides, whether it be Doc Ock, Prowler, Kingpin, you name it, and then of course Spider-Ham and Spider-Noir. They all just represent what it actually means to Miles of becoming a Spider-Man and taking that leap of faith. And it's also kind of impressive that John Mulaney is in both of these movies portraying such cartoonish pigs that don't really take anything too seriously in the overall course of the film, which is a true testament of what actually makes these films successful. But besides that point, you just see how much they did adding all the elements of previous villains and stuffing it into one film, where each one plays their own part for the very story without having to do too much in their own background to explore the main plot. How a story can be great if they can really show what the goal is trying to be achieved in the end game, and I just hope that we could get more of those stories of its type to tell, to show the audience how much they are valuable to the film itself and how without it, most of them would suffer because they already had their goals set out in the first place. And with that said, that's all I have to add to this story, so goodbye.